Space was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the terrifying one. The kind that felt like the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Something bad. Captain Aaron Cole hated that silence. Sitting alone in the cockpit of a stolen fighter ship drifting through the dark zone just outside the solar shield, he checked the coordinates again. No mistake. This was where they said he would show up. The assassin. Aaron leaned back in his chair, cracked his knuckles and smiled. Not because he wasn't scared, he was, but because deep down there was a part of him that loved being underestimated. And humans? Oh, they were always underestimated. Especially by the Galactic Dominion. The Dominion thought Earth was a backwater.
Rock full of emotional, primitive creatures. It didn't help that humans had only recently crawled into interstellar space, barely able to defend their little planet.
But what they didn't understand, what they never could understand, was that humans were different. They didn't fight fair, they didn't play by rules. And when pushed too far, they became something terrifying, just like now. 3 weeks
ago, the Dominion bombed a civilian station near Mars. Thousands dead, families, children, no warning.
Just a show of power. They called it a reminder. That was a mistake, because Earth didn't send a diplomat. They didn't send a peace offering. They sent Aaron. And Aaron had one job, make them regret it. But before he could start, they found out. Somehow the Dominion knew what Earth was planning. So they made a move of their own. They sent him Zirak Thol, their cleaner. A species known as the Cracks had bred him in labs where weakness was burned out of the DNA. No emotions.
No mercy. No failures. Zirak had ended entire rebellions by himself. He once killed a queen mid-speech in front of her entire army just to make a point. And now he was coming for Aaron. Aaron smirked as he saw a flicker on the radar. One ship. Fast, cold, efficient. That's him, he whispered. The Crack's ship emerged from the void like a ghost. Matter black, razor-edged, not a single light. No signal, no words. It wasn't here to talk. Aaron stood from his seat, stretched, and casually walked toward the ship's airlock. He left his weapons behind because this wasn't going.
To be fair. Moments later, the doors hissed open. Zirak Thol stepped through like a shadow with bones. 8 feet tall, armor fused into his skin, eyes glowing like coals in a dead fire. His voice came out like a broken machine. Human! I will.
Make it quick.
Aaron tilted his head, raised an eyebrow. Oh, that's sweet of you. Without a word, Zirak lunged. Fast, so fast Aaron barely had time to dodge. Metal claws slashed through air where his throat had been a second ago. He dropped low, rolled, came up laughing. Zirak paused. You find this amusing? He growled. Aaron shrugged. No, I've heard stories. I expected more. Zirak roared and attacked again, this time with a blade from his forearm. Aaron didn't dodge this time. He moved forward, right into the strike. The blade hit skin and broke. Zirak stared. Aaron smiled wider, his skin rippling with a faint shimmer of energy. Yeah, funny thing about humans, we learn fast. Then without warning, Aaron grabbed Zirak's arm and crushed it. Not just broke it, crushed. Bone, metal, muscle, all of it. Zirak screamed. He stumbled back, clutching the shattered limb, eyes wide for the first time in his life. "What? Are you?" Arin walked forward slowly. Calm. Controlled. "Something your Dominion didn't plan for," he said softly. "A human who didn't stop evolving." Zirak fell to one knee, breathing
Heavy, sweat rolling down his alien skin. And then he did something no one believed possible. He begged, "Please, kill me quickly." But Arin just stood over him, eyes burning like stars, and whispered, "No, you're going to live. And you're going to crawl back to your masters and tell
them what fear tastes like." The silence after the scream was different this time. Not the eerie quiet of space, but a silence filled with disbelief, pain, and fear. Zirak Thol had never tasted that before. Fear. It made his lungs feel tight, made his fingers tremble. And that, more than the shattered bones in his arm, terrified him. Arin didn't say anything more. He just stood there, watching him, like a scientist studying a failed experiment. Zirak's thoughts raced. This wasn't possible. The intel on Earth was clear. Underdeveloped, emotionally unstable species, barely out of their solar system. Their bodies were fragile. Their weapons, laughable. This human should have died in seconds. Instead, Zirak was on his knees, broken.
humiliated and still alive only because Arin let him be. What did they do to you? Zirak finally choked out, blood from his shattered arm dripping on the cold floor. Arin tilted his head as if amused by the question. You think this was done to me? No, this is what we became, what you made us become. Zirak's vision swam. That's not possible. Humans can't evolve, adapt. Arin interrupted. You bombed a civilian station and thought it would break us. But that pressure, that pain, it changed us.
He stepped closer. Project Prometheus, Arin said quietly, as if saying it aloud was a warning. Zirak's eyes widened. That name, he'd heard whispers of it. Hidden reports, redacted files, a rogue Terran project supposedly buried decades.
Ago, genetic augmentation, neural rewiring, hybrid warfare, a failed experiment, or so they thought. You were the first?
Zirak asked, voice barely a whisper. Arin grinned. First that survived, the others, not so lucky. And suddenly it all made sense. The arrogance, the calmness, the inhuman strength, the shimmer in his skin. This wasn't just a soldier. This was a weapon built from pain, a response to the Dominion's arrogance. Zirak crawled backward, struggling to rise, his body trembling from damage and something worse, doubt. He'd been bred to be flawless, but this wasn't a fight.
Anymore, this was punishment. I have to return, Zirak muttered, blood in his throat. I must warn them. Arin didn't stop him. Didn't move, just watched. Good. Go crawl back to them. Tell them humanity's not begging anymore. Zirak stumbled into the airlock, slamming his hand against the controls. The door hissed.
Shut behind him, leaving Arin alone again. As soon as the ship disconnected, Arin exhaled and collapsed into a chair. He felt everything. The bruises, the fractures, the burn in his muscles from the genetic fire constantly rebuilding him. He'd played it cool. But the truth was, it almost killed him. Zirak was a monster, and Earth wasn't ready to fight a galaxy full of monsters like him, but they would. Because now the Dominion knew. Humanity had teeth. Far across the galaxy, in the cold marble chambers of the Dominion High Council, alarms echoed through the walls. A battered Krax ship crash-landed in the Citadel's bay, and inside it the best assassin the Dominion had ever produced limped out, his arm in ruins, his face twisted in something they'd never seen before, terror. Zirak fell before the council, voice shaking. Earth
is not what we thought. The human, he is a demon. His strength, it broke me. And worse, he let me live. The Grand Strategist narrowed her eyes. Let you live? Zirak nodded slowly. As a message. He said, tell them what fear tastes like. For the first time in decades, the High Council sat in stunned silence, and one voice broke it. A young tactician, pale and shaking. Do we invade Earth now? The strategist turned her gaze toward the stars. No, she said coldly. We don't invade Earth. She paused, then whispered, we quarantine it. The stars over Earth didn't look any different. They still blinked.
Softly, in the velvet black, distant and beautiful. But down below, in a place buried 50 stories beneath the Rocky Mountains, everything was changing. Project Prometheus had officially been reactivated. Commander Ilana Reese stood over a glowing table, eyes scanning reports coming in from deep space satellites, Dominion intercepts and ground ops. A woman with nerves like stone and a voice like cold steel, she had one rule for her command. Hope is for civilians. We deal in facts, and the facts were simple. Earth had just sent a message. Now they had to prepare for the reply. Subject Cole
has returned, said a young lieutenant, stepping into the room. Vitals stable, genetic core still holding. Reese nodded, but didn't smile. Damage? 2 cracked ribs, minor spinal stress, internal bruising, but considering he went toe-to-toe with Zirak Thol and walked away.
He's in good shape. He's lucky, Reese muttered. Or stupid. The room fell quiet for a moment, tension hanging like smoke. Then she looked up, sharp as a blade. Wake the others, the lieutenant hesitated. All of them? Yes, the whole pack, he blinked. Even Subject Zero? Reese didn't answer right away. She stared at the hologram of the galaxy, slowly zooming in on Dominion-controlled space, then whispered, if they're scared enough to back off, now's the time to push. The room buzzed with movement. Across the base, alarms lit up. In cryo chambers hidden behind coded doors, the other Prometheus subjects, humans rebuilt for war, began to stir. Some still had nightmares in their frozen minds. Others only remembered pain, rage, and training. All of them were lethal, and in the deepest chamber, submerged in gel and cables, Subject Zero opened his eyes. Meanwhile, Aaron Cole sat alone in the med bay, staring at his bandaged hand. The bones were healing. Fast, almost too fast. His muscles already felt ready for another fight. But his mind, not so much. He kept seeing Zirak's eyes, the fear in them. The way a creature built to kill was reduced to a begging mess. Was he proud of what he did? Yes. Did it haunt him? Also yes. Knock, knock, a voice came from the door. Aaron looked up and smiled faintly. It was Kara, his engineer, his best friend since boot camp, and maybe the only person in the galaxy who still treated him like a human instead of a weapon. She walked in, tossing him a fresh uniform.
Heard you made a space demon cry, that true? Something like that, Arin said, smirking. But don't believe everything the brass says. He nearly cut me in half. Yeah, well, next time try not to make galactic war criminals cry.
So loud, it freaked out every satellite we've got. They both laughed for a moment, but it faded quickly. Too much weight in the air. Kara sat beside him, her voice softer. They're waking the others, aren't they? Yeah, you...
Think it's going to be enough?
Arin looked at her, his expression serious. No, but it's a start. Across the stars, in the Dominion's inner sanctum, the High Council argued. Some demanded immediate retaliation, some insisted on diplomacy, but none of them could ignore
one terrifying truth. They had no idea what Earth was anymore, and fear of the unknown.
That's what broke empires. One voice rose above the rest. Admiral Dravak, head of military intelligence, stepped forward. His skin shimmered with authority. His voice filled the room like thunder. We made a mistake. We poked a beast we didn't.
Understand, but we will understand it now. He raised his hand. Bring me every record, every sensor scan, every genetic sample we have of the human named Arin Cole. I want to know what they did to him. I want to know how. And in the shadows of the Dominion's black labs, a new project began to rise. They called it Project Chimera. If they couldn't destroy the humans, they'd become something worse. The Dominion had never needed fear before. They
ruled with cold precision, efficient, brutal, unquestioned. Whole planets bowed before they ever saw a single ship. Civilizations erased with the press of a button. But now, one human had changed everything. Not a fleet, not a weapon. Just one man, and that was terrifying. Inside Lab 9, a place so classified, it technically didn't exist. Admiral Dravak stood behind a thick wall of reinforced glass. Before him, inside a containment chamber, floated a creature not quite human, not quite alien. It was tall. Muscles pulsed under semi-transparent skin. Its face had no eyes, just ridges where human features should have been. Breathing was irregular.
Limbs twitched with unnatural speed. It was beautiful and horrifying at the same time. A scientist in a slick black suit turned to Dravak.
First Chimera prototype is responding well to neural grafting. Genetic structure stabilized after the fourth infusion. We had to use 37% human DNA. Dravak frowned. That much? It's the only way to get the adaptability. Dominion, genes alone can't match the regenerative effect. The rage. It's unique to their species. The Admiral folded his arms. You're saying we have to become like them to survive them? The scientist nodded. Yes, sir, to fight monsters. Dravak finished the sentence for him. You have to birth your own. He turned away from the glass, eyes cold. Begin field trials and give it a name. The scientist looked puzzled. Sir? Give it a name, Dravak repeated. Something the humans will learn to fear. He paused, then smiled. Call it Ashbourne. Back on Earth, the Prometheus facility was no longer just a secret. It was a command center. Its underground walls echoed with movement. Guards, engineers, medics, and soldiers moving like veins of a living organism. Subject Zero had awoken. Arin stood outside the chamber, staring through a similar wall of glass. Inside stood a man with white eyes, shaven head, and a body covered in cybernetic scars. But more terrifying than his appearance was the stillness. Zero didn't move, didn't speak, just stared back. Rhys stepped beside Arin. He remembers you. I know, Orind said quietly. You think he's still stable? No, Orin replied without hesitation. He was never stable. Then why are you here? Orin didn't answer for a moment. He just kept staring at Zero. Because if the Dominion's building monsters, we'll need our own. Rhys gave a slow nod. The others are ready. They've trained for this. They're stronger than you were when you entered the program. They'll need to be, Orin muttered, because this won't be like last time. She narrowed her eyes. Last time they sent a killer. Orin looked at
her. This time they'll send a war.
In low orbit above the moon, Earth's newest defense array was taking form. Massive satellites lined with solar lances and particle disruptors. It wasn't enough to stop a full Dominion fleet, but it would slow them down. Buy time. That's what Earth needed. Time to turn humans into gods. Inside the training chamber, Prometheus subjects ran through simulations, brutal ones. Enemies didn't just shoot back, they learned, adapted, the environment shifted constantly. Fire, gravity distortion, psychological warfare. Subject 4 collapsed, screaming from a hallucination the neural AI had pumped into his brain. Subject 7 was halfway through ripping an enemy drone in two when her spine cracked, and she didn't stop. Pain was normal, fear was fuel. This was no longer a military program, it was survival evolution, and every subject had one thought drilled into their mind. Over and over, humanity doesn't run. It adapts, it overcomes, it wins. Across the galaxy, hidden within a black nebula, the Ashborn stood inside a Dominion warship, staring at a hologram of Earth. Its mind was raw, but its orders were clear. Not to kill Arin Cole, to break him, to prove that even humanity's
strongest could bleed. As the warship shifted towards slipstream drive, the Ashborn tilted its head slightly and spoke for the first time. One word, one name. Cole. And with that, the hunt began. The sky above Earth cracked. It wasn't thunder.
It wasn't an explosion, it was space, splitting for a moment as something enormous slipped through, silent and unseen by the naked eye. Dominion stealth ships didn't light up radar, they didn't send signals, they didn't announce their presence. They arrived like death, quiet, unexpected, and absolute. High above the atmosphere, a single black arrow-shaped ship floated, blending with the stars. Inside it stood the Ashborn, still, calm, unnervingly human in its silence. But every
inch of it was made to destroy, not just bodies.
Not just cities, but hope. On board Earth's orbital defense platform, Callisto Watch, alarms began to scream. Unidentified mass just exited slipstream. 80 clicks above equatorial orbit, said the technician, voice shaking. We've got no registry, no ping, it just appeared. Commander Rhys was already on comms. Shut down satellite feed, switched to hardwired relay. Bring Prometheus online, and the technician's screen blinked. Static, then darkness, then a face. Not a real face. A warped, half-human, half-alien mask of twitching skin and pale veins, grinning with teeth that didn't quite belong. The
Ashborn had found the transmission. It was watching them. Rhys stood frozen. Then the face spoke. I am not here for your world. Its voice sounded like a broken radio running through a dying throat. I am here for your mistake. Then it vanished. The feed cut to black. Get me Cole, Rhys barked. Now.
Aaron didn't flinch when the red lights filled the Prometheus barracks. He was already suited, already ready. Part of him knew this would happen. It was never going to be a diplomatic delay or a warning shot. It was always going to be this. Stepped into the briefing room. Reese stood at the hollow table, jaw tight, eyes harder than usual. "It's here," she said. "I figured. Dominion didn't send a fleet. Just it." "It?" "Ashbourne. Looks part human, looks part—" "You?" Aaron didn't move, didn't breathe for a moment. "They cloned me? No. Worse, they learned from you." Kara was already bringing up combat data, scrolling through simulations, strike zones, weak points. But none of it mattered. They were up against something that didn't fight like a machine or think like a soldier. It hunted like a nightmare. Aaron clenched his fists. "You need to evacuate the station. It wants me." "We're not sacrificing you," Reese snapped. He looked at her, eyes dark and calm. "You're not sacrificing me. I'm volunteering." She stared at him for a long time, then slowly nodded. "You've got one shot. That's all I need." An hour later, Aaron stood on the edge of an abandoned Earth desert testing ground. Nothing for miles except cracked rock and twisted metal skeletons from failed weapon tests. That was the point. He didn't want civilians, didn't want soldiers, just
him. And the thing that came to kill him. The Ashbourne dropped from the sky like a falling god. No engines, no warning, just a streak of black fire crashing into the sand and rising from the smoke with steam lifting off its skin. Aaron didn't blink.
stepped forward 20 feet away now and spoke first. "You came all this way. You bring hell with you?" The Ashbourne tilted its head, mimicking his voice in eerie, perfect tone. "No, I am hell." Then it attacked, faster than Zerak, smarter than any simulation. It didn't swing wild, it predicted. It watched Aaron's shoulders tense before the first punch. It calculated distance in microseconds, but Aaron didn't calculate. He improvised. He ducked the first strike, let it graze his cheek, and countered with a low sweep. The Ashbourne stumbled, but not from the hit, from surprise. It didn't expect a human to take the hit to get closer. Aaron grinned through blood. "Yeah, we cheat." The fight became chaos. Fists broke sound, bones cracked, blood hit the ground not just from Aaron, but from the Ashbourne. Too, it could bleed, and that meant it could die. But as the Ashbourne was thrown against a metal husk of a collapsed drone tower, it laughed, a guttural, wet sound that echoed too loud. "Kill me if you want," it rasped. "They've already made—"
More. Aaron froze. "What?"
The Ashbourne stood, skin repairing, bones clicking back in place. "You started this war with one soldier. We'll end it with 1,000 like me." Then it lunged again, and this time Aaron wasn't fast enough. The ground cratered beneath the impact. Dust shot into the air like smoke from a dying engine. For a few brutal seconds there was no sound except the wind and the soft, wet thud of a body hitting broken earth. Aaron Cole lay flat, blood pouring from a gash above his eye, his
Ribs screaming with every shallow breath.
His vision flickered, blackness on one side, red on the other. He tasted dirt and iron. The Ashbourne stood over him, flawless again. No blood, no cracks, skin healed, armor pulsing with alien light. Its face was expressionless, but its voice oozed.
Something close to satisfaction. "You broke the assassin. You scared the council, but me?" It crouched, face inches from Aaron's. "You can't scare me." Aaron tried to move, but his arm wouldn't respond. His neural interface screamed with static. The serum in his blood was trying to rebuild his fractured body, but it needed time. Time he didn't have. You're just a copy, Aaron gritted out. A bad one. The Ashbourne tilted its head. Maybe, but even your worst nightmare becomes real if you see it enough. It lifted Aaron
by the throat, and then, suddenly, it stopped. For just a moment, its hand twitched, like a glitch. Then another. The grip loosened. "What the hell?" the Ashbourne muttered. Then its back exploded in fire. A rail spike the size of a spear slammed through its shoulder, pinning it to the ground. It roared, not in pain, but fury, and turned, just in time to see Subject Zero drop from a cliff above, landing with enough force to split the rock. "Get your hands off my brother," Zero growled. Aaron gasped, coughing, as Zero knelt beside him. "You're late," Zero smirked, lifting him to his feet. "You were early." The Ashbourne tore itself free from the spike, snarling, leaking pale fluid from its side. Another toy, another failure. But this wasn't a one-on-one fight anymore. Subject
Zero moved like a phantom, pure violence, no hesitation. He hit the Ashbourne with such force that the sound cracked the horizon. And this time, the Ashbourne staggered. It wasn't used to resistance.
It wasn't used to pain twice in 1 hour. And now it had both. Aaron stood back up, ribs still screaming, but adrenaline silencing everything else. He tapped his neural trigger. Power surged through his veins. The serum in his system kicked into
overdrive, overriding the pain signals. "You ready?" he called to Zero. Zero cracked his knuckles. "Born ready!" Together they attacked. The Ashbourne tried to adapt, but it was outnumbered. 2 evolved humans, 1 programmed beast.
And for the first time since it was created, the Ashbourne lost control of the fight. The final blow came from Aaron, a bone-breaking knee to the jaw, followed by a charged punch directly into its chest. The Ashbourne flew back, crashed into a ravine, wall, and didn't rise. Smoke poured from its chest cavity. Its breathing was ragged, its limbs jerked like corrupted code, but even in defeat,
it laughed. "You think this ends here?" Zero stepped forward. "No, we're counting on it not to." Then he reached out, grabbed the Ashbourne's head, yes, and crushed it. Silence returned. Not peace, just silence. Aaron dropped to one knee, his body finally catching up to the damage. Zero stood beside him, quiet, watching. "That thing was just the beginning," Aaron said. Zero nodded. "We need to talk to Reese. Full lockdown, then a fence." "Not just a fence," Aaron said, standing again. "We take the fight to them." Back.
At Prometheus' command, alarms rang again. This time, it wasn't just another breach, it was a message, intercepted from deep Dominion space. A countdown, 1 week, 100 Chimera. Invasion protocol initiated. Reese stared at the screen, her throat tight. "They're not sending warships." Kara looked at her, pale. "Then what are they sending?" Reese answered, without looking away. "They're sending nightmares." In the war room beneath the Rockies, the lights were low, the tension thick, enough to choke on. Everyone knew what the blinking red clock on the wall meant. 6 days, 14 hours, 23 minutes. That was all the time Earth had left. Commander Reese stood before the Prometheus squad, hands clasped behind her back. Her voice was
calm but Every word hit like a hammer.
They're not just sending monsters, they're sending clones of the Ashborn, improved, refined, maybe smarter, definitely faster. Subject 12, a wiry young man with burning eyes, shifted nervously. We can't stop 100 of those things, not even with all of us. You're right, Reese said, which is why we're not going to stop them here. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to Aaron. He stepped forward, his face bruised, stitched, but steady. We go there. Before they launch, we shut the factory down, we kill this thing at the root. One of the medtechs spoke up. You're talking about infiltrating Dominion core space. That's suicide. Not suicide, Aaron said. Just very, very stupid. Zero chuckled in the corner. I like stupid. Reese didn't smile. We've analyzed Dominion launch routes. There's a narrow window 6 hours long when they power up the wormhole gates. During that time, security drops. Their systems reroute power to the jump drive arrays. If we slip in just before launch, we can hit their primary facility. Kara leaned over the table, her eyes scanning the schematics. We blow the lab. They lose the Chimera. No Chimera, no invasion, Arin nodded. We don't need to kill
100 monsters. We just need to kill their mother. Reese clicked a remote. The hologram above the table changed, showing a massive dark station orbiting a dying blue sun. Fortress-like, angular and armored in black plates. Ravex Prime. The birthplace of the Chimera. This is where they're being bred, Reese said.
Bioforged, tank-grown, fed Dominion data, and trained in digital battlefields. They'll be perfect, ruthless, and unborn, Arin added, which means they'll never see us coming. Meanwhile, far from Earth, inside the cold heart of Ravex Prime, Dominion scientists prepared the first wave. Vats lined the chamber walls, each one pulsing with blue light and thick fluid. Limbs twitched within them, mouths opened with no sound, rows and rows of half-finished monsters. Hybrid, muscle, synthetic bones, minds designed only to destroy. Standing above them was a figure cloaked in bio-armor. Not a soldier, not a scientist, something worse. A monitor, a creature of Dominion intelligence tasked with overseeing their darkest projects, emotionless, inhuman. Batch 001 through Zul 50 complete, a drone reported. Synaptic pathways calibrated. Combat reflexes fully functional. Run scenario Cole again, the monitor commanded. Failure rate must drop below 4%. Yes, monitor. On the screens above, digital simulations of Arin appeared, fighting, adapting, winning. Each Chimera version thrown at him fell, one after another. Still too human, the monitor muttered. They hesitate, a smaller technician spoke from behind a console. We could remove hesitation protocol entirely. And risk uncontrollable units? A pause. Do it. The Dominion didn't care about losses. They only cared about result. Back on Earth, Arin stood with Zero, Kara, and the Prometheus strike team as they boarded the Wraith, a black stealth cruiser built for one purpose. Go where no one should. Survive. The team was small, only 6 of them, enough to slip in, enough to destroy everything. Kara strapped herself in next to Arin. You know we might not come back, right? He looked at her, not smiling, just honest. Yeah, but if we don't...
Go. Nobody comes back.
The ship powered up, the lights dimmed, and for a moment everything was still. Then the countdown hit 0. Operation Black Sun had begun, across the galaxy, The Dominion's armies prepared for victory. They didn't know that death was already on its way to knock first, and this time humanity wasn't asking permission. The Wraith tore through slipspace like a whisper of death, silent and undetected. Its hull was lined with quantum scramblers, bouncing off every scan Ravex Prime threw at the void. Inside, 6 Prometheus operatives sat in silence. Nobody joked. Nobody prayed. Because you don't pray when you're the thing others pray against. Aaron stood by the hatch, his armor humming softly, synaptic cords woven into his spine. Kara sat at the comm station, fingers flying across controls, checking maps they weren't supposed to have. Subject Zero leaned against the wall, already cracking his knuckles like the fight had started in his head. "We drop in hot," Kara whispered. "Entry point's a waste chute on the lower quadrant." "Gross, but it's the only way past their thermal grid." Aaron smirked. "Nothing like crawling through garbage to make you feel alive." The ship jolted. "Gravwell detected," Kara snapped. "We're being pulled in." "Then that's our stop," Aaron growled. The airlock hissed, and the Prometheus team dove straight into hell. The bowels of Ravex Prime were worse than any of them expected. Dark, wet, reeking of synthetic chemicals and rot. Pipes oozed with fluid that hissed when it hit metal. Every sound echoed, some mechanical, some alive. They moved fast. 3 guards spotted them. 3 bodies hit the ground seconds later. No alarms. Yet.
Jesus, Kara breathed. They weren't bluffing. Zero stepped forward, looking into one vat where a near-finished chimera pressed its face against the glass. It looked like Aaron, but wrong. Empty. Dead inside. They're copying him.
Zero said quietly. "Not just me," Orin whispered. "They're trying to replace us." He planted the charges. One by one, each vat was tagged. Each wall lined with high-yield plasma bombs stolen from a downed Dominion carrier 2 years back. Earth had been preparing for this moment longer than they admitted. "Charges set," Kara confirmed. "We've got 5 minutes." Then the lights changed red, and the air filled with that same dead voice from before. "You think we didn't plan for this?" The monitor. Its voice boomed across the walls. "From every vent, every speaker. You walk among monsters and forget. You are the original." The wall at the far end shattered and outstepped the second Ashborn. No, not Ashborn, Ashmother. Taller, sharper, eyes glowing like 2 suns. "Let's see what your evolution really looks like," it snarled. Then it lunged. Subject 9 died first, snapped in half mid-sentence. 11 got impaled through the gut before she even turned. Then 0 hit it. The ground cracked. They traded blows like planets colliding. But the Ash Mother wasn't built like the first one. It didn't glitch. It didn't hesitate. It learned, and it was fast, too fast. Aaron stepped in, slamming a rail spike into its side, then a blast to its head, only to be thrown back through a steel wall. "Go!" he shouted through blood. "Kara, blow the place, but you're still... Go!" Kara hesitated for 1 heartbeat, then hit the trigger. Ravex Prime lit up like a star being born. The explosion tore through the DNA vaults, vaporizing Chimera in their wombs. The firestorm spread to the generator cores, setting off a chain reaction the Dominion hadn't accounted for. because who would expect a human to blow up the place they were still inside? As the shockwave ripped through steel and bone, the Ash Mother roared, and Arin tackled it, locking his arms around its chest as they were both swallowed in light. Back on Earth, they waited. 1 minute past detonation, then 2, then 5. No word, no signal, just silence. Rhys stood over the comms, pale. Kara was there too, bloodied, ash-covered, barely breathing, tears mixing with dirt. "He didn't make it?" a tech whispered. Rhys shook her head. "No, he made sure we did." 3 days later, in the ruins of Dominion territory, a single escape pod drifted out of the wreckage, burnt, scarred, but intact. Inside it, a man barely breathing, wrapped in wires, eyes closed, Arin Cole alive. And when the Dominion heard what he did, how he destroyed their nightmare before it was born, they didn't retaliate, they didn't send more assassins, they shut their gates and whispered one name like a curse: human.